So, you've just gone and built your very own workhorse. Maybe it's your first time building a PC, or maybe you just need a refresher. Either way, this video will be here to take you through the steps of setting up your newly built PC. For the first step on the journey to setting up your new PC, we're going to need to download the drivers required for the hardware to work properly. For this step, you're going to need a spare USB stick and another machine, be that laptop or desktop, in order to download the software required. As a small explanation, drivers are pieces of software that we use on our computers to allow our hardware to properly talk to the OS. It acts as a translator of sorts, allowing the machine language to communicate with that of the OS. So, you want to start by looking at the parts that you ordered for your machine. Because there's so many different parts and manufacturers, there's a bit of variation in which way you would go around acquiring these drivers, but they're all pretty straightforward and will follow a similar route, which we'll go through in this video. For the motherboard's drivers, head over to the manufacturer's website. When you're there, look up the individual board's name. After you've found it, you'll want to head to the support section. From here, you can head to drivers and tools. Here, you'll find the specific drivers for your individual motherboard. There can be quite a few, so make sure to download them all. They all have their individual purposes, be that from lighting to overclocking, and you'll find use out of most of them. When it comes to your GPU, simply head to the link on screen if you're with AMD. This site will allow you to download an installer which will automatically detect your individual GPU and download the required and necessary drivers. If you're using an NVIDIA GPU, instead head to this link. Of course, it will be in the description as well. Here you'll be able to download the GeForce Experience drivers, which do much the same as AMD's installer, except with added bonuses. It acts more as a software package than a individual driver installation package, which means it gives you extra abilities, such as automatic updates to the latest versions of drivers, as well as screen capture and screenshot abilities. Sometimes other parts of your machine will require additional drivers. This will be noted down in your included instruction manuals, so please make sure to read through them, or at least skim, just to make sure you're not missing anything. Now that your drivers are ready, let's look at installing the OS. First of all, you're going to need to either have the USB stick that's sold with copies of Windows Ready itself, which contains a copy of a Windows installer, or failing that, you can get this copy of the Windows installer from Microsoft itself. I'll put a link in the description to the website. Microsoft hosts this downloader, and you'll need to create it onto a USB stick with a 16GB minimum USB stick, which will wipe anything on the USB, so be prepared for that. Next, you're going to want to plug in that USB stick into your new machine and fire it up. On startup, you'll be prompted by the BIOS to enter into the BIOS management screen. This will be either an F key, such as F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, or the delete key, in most instances at least. Pressing this key will enter you into the BIOS settings menu. Most modern motherboards use graphical user interfaces for their BIOS menus now, so you'll be able to use your mouse and keyboard as you would with a regular desktop to navigate around and change settings. Failing that, you may be stuck with a command line aesthetic for your BIOS menu. Instead of using your mouse, you'll have to just stick with your keyboard here. Here, you want to navigate to your boot order and set your USB device to boot first. An extra step here, if you're using high-spec RAM, is that you want to navigate to your memory or DRAM settings. This can sometimes be under the main menu settings, or it could be under the overclocking settings. Here, you want to enable the XMP profile. This will allow your PC to take full advantage of your individual parts. Now that you've changed these settings, click Save and Exit. After you've done this, you should be taken back to the BIOS startup screen, and it should lead you into the Windows installer. Follow the instructions on screen, and it will take you through every step of the process of installing Windows onto your new machine. A quick note here, if you've installed multiple hard drives already into your machine, is that you want to select the correct one for installing your OS onto, as it can only install onto one drive. This can be especially important if you're using a HDD and an SSD in parallel. After this is done, you're going to want to head straight back into your BIOS screen and reset your boot order. This is done so that way we start up on a hard drive that we just installed the OS onto. We're nearly done now, so hold up in there. Now that you're loaded into Windows, you're going to want to plug in that first USB stick we downloaded all the drivers onto. Now that that's in, you're going to want to start transferring the drivers over to the desktop. Now you have them on your machine, let's start installing them. Starting with the motherboard drivers, you'll want to start installing them one by one. This will allow them all to install without interfering with each other. Once the motherboard drivers are installed, and you have internet connection, which is included in one of your drivers as a LAN controller, you'll be able to install your GPU drivers and others drivers that require internet connections. Congratulations, you've done it. Your PC should be ready and raring to go. Your next steps will be downloading any extra software you want to use and customizing your wallpaper. I hope you found this YouTube tutorial helpful, and I hope you have a very successful day. Goodbye.